Tarrant County Master Gardener Association has partnered with the Tarrant Regional Water District to encourage water conservation. TRWD maintains 4 area lakes and pipelines needed to provide surface water to local water treatment plants so they can clean that water to meet drinking standards for our communities. They also work with many cities in Tarrant County, such as Fort Worth, Arlington, Mansfield, and many others, to provide water conservation programs to the community. Conservation is an important water supply strategy to help meet the needs of our growing population. There are currently 2.3 million people living in Tarrant County, and this is expected to double over the next 50 years. At SaveTarrantWater.com, you can sign up for free weekly watering advice custom to your location. If you're a resident of Tarrant County, you can sign up for a free sprinkler's checkup where a licensed irrigator comes to your home, provides a comprehensive evaluation of your system with recommendations to reduce water waste. There's also an event calendar where you can find information about future classes and workshops. So be sure and check out SaveTarrantWater.com to sign up for their free services.
Hi, I'm Brittnay Meyer with Texas A&M AgriLife. I am the Home Horticulture Agent for Tarrant County, and today we're going to talk about how to winterize your landscape. So Earthkind Landscaping is a program through A&M that is about providing maximum garden and landscaping while preserving and protecting our environment. This is all based on research techniques, and it really is the combination of organic and traditional gardening that's been brought up through the years. It reduces maintenance requirements, it's environmentally sound, and it's a great environmental program. It's used to create beautiful, easy care landscapes while protecting our natural resources for generations to enjoy. It began in the 1980s with Dr. Steve George, who is still over in our Dallas Center. It was the hybrid approach, the Make Sense approach, and it's one of the fastest growing university programs of its kind in the nation. Earthkind encourages water conservation, water quality protection, the reduction of fertilizer and pesticide use, energy conservation, and reduction of yard waste. So in 2020, yard waste was 20% of our landfill volume, because people will take these yard trimmings and they throw them away instead of recycling them or putting them in their compost, or honestly, a lot of these yard trimmings can be left in your yard. So reducing that yard trimmings in our landfills is going to help a lot. So back to the task at hand, when to winterize. So our frost dates are about November 14th to March 21st. If you don't know what a frost date is, it's the average date of the last light freeze in the spring or the first light freeze in the fall. And light freeze is categorized as 29 to 32 degrees Celsius, which tender plants are killed. So you're talking about your tropical plants, succulents, cacti. They're a little more tender, so they're going to most likely die. Moderate freeze is 25 to 28. Most vegetation, most leaves are going to die. Your woody plants, anything that has a hard bark on it, those will survive, but their leaves will most likely fall off. And then a severe freeze is 24 or below, and that's going to be heavy damage to, if you haven't really prepared a lot of your smaller landscape plants, or plants just aren't used to that kind of weather, they're most likely not going to make it. The best time to winterize are as soon as temperatures start to drop, so right now. And today, as I'm recording this, it is 57 degrees outside and rainy, and it is just not a great environment for our plants that have been experiencing 90-degree weather the past week. So right now is the best time to be prepared before it's too late, before we hit our first big freeze and you lose all those beautiful landscape plants that you have. Prepare for more than just the cold. Just because it's cold, you might be able to protect against that or think that your plants will survive, but also what we get during the winter are freezing rain, sometimes hail. We've had snow the past couple of years, which is still shocking. I was in College Station last year when we had that huge freeze, and I was like, we are too far south for this. but it is beginning to happen more often. So also wind. We get a lot of wind during our winter times if your smaller trees are not staked properly or you don't have wind barriers. Just because a plant would be able to survive cold weather, that wind coming through colder air, it's going to put more damage on those leaves, and your plant might not survive because of that. And remember, there is no typical weather in Texas. Just because the past 2 years it's been snowing, you never know, this year it might not snow, though it is predicted that it will snow again. And also, fall is a great time to rethink and reevaluate your landscape design. So places that you can make improvements, taking your more systematic approach to landscaping is a crucial in conserving and protecting natural resources. So, taking some plants out that aren't native or are invasive or just aren't doing well, and making sure to plant new, tough, native plants so, again, you don't have to as much maintenance in the future. So one of the most important topics to talk about is protecting your pipes, protecting your irrigation systems, and making sure they don't freeze and end up blowing and causing sometimes catastrophic damage to our landscape or to our homes. One of the first things I tell a lot of new homeowners, they move into a home, they get really excited that there's an irrigation system, but they know nothing past that. They don't know how to set the timer, set the schedule, or even know where their pipes are or what type of system they actually have. Sometimes if it's a newer build, it'll have an irrigation plan, or you can ask your builder for that. Or you can go and run your system to help flag out sprinkler heads, and that will also kind of help you figure out where those underground pipes are. If you can kind of see where the sprinkler heads are in a line, or they might be connected this way. And then to locate those above ground sections that you have, your backflow systems. Sometimes you'll have above ground pipes, the pipe that might lead from underground into your home. Make sure you know where everything is. And if you don't, or if you need to have your system checked and you don't feel like that's something you can do, you can have your system checked with Tarrant Regional Water District. If you go to savetarrantwater.com and click on their residential sprinkler evaluation program, you can set up a time to have a free evaluation. I will say right now, their logs are kind of backed up. It's going to take some time, but it's something that'd be great for you to do now. Maybe get on for the spring. And if you can't have someone to come out right now before we have a freeze, you can call a licensed irrigation company. Make sure they have their irrigation license. And then again, check yourself for leaks or broken heads. You can run your system, have it run where every single zone runs for 30 seconds so you can see, okay, that head is broken. It seems that there's a little bubbling under the soil or under the mulch right here. That might be a broken pipe. So you can do a little yourself, but have someone that has a license if you truly don't know what you're doing to come out and look at it. And if we're going to have prolonged freezes, make sure to turn your system off. You don't want it accidentally running in the middle of the night when it's 25 degrees outside and those pipes are frozen, and trying to push that water through, that pressure is going to blow a pipe. So make sure your system is off. And honestly, during the winter, you can probably turn it off for most days because your plants and your grass aren't going to need as much water. And if we have more days like today where we get all this rain, we might not need an irrigation system. So once you find those above ground sections, obviously you want to insulate those above ground pipes in your faucets, just like you do with your water hose faucets or any other pipes coming in and out of your house. Just make sure those are insulated. You can go to box stores and get the foam piping, pipe cover, or they have other products that you can use. or when you don't have anything, if there's a freeze that you were unaware of, you can use a towel. You can use a beach towel, any kind of towel, and make sure to insulate those pipes really well. Drain your irrigation components that are installed above ground. So a lot of times your backflow system or those other components, they'll have a release valve that will push the water out. Again, if you don't feel comfortable doing that, call someone to come do it. It doesn't take a lot of time, or YouTube videos are great. Just make sure you get one that is from your irrigation systems manufacturer. So a lot of those backflow systems and stuff are going to have a brand name on it, and look for that brand name. And again, those manufacturer websites are going to have a lot of good information, YouTube videos, PDFs, and you might even be able to chat with somebody about how to winterize your system. And then of course, if you're not going to take water hoses off of your house or off faucets, which is the best way to do it, but even when you do take them off, drain water hoses. Make sure when you take it off and you go to wind it up, make sure you get all the water out so you don't have a frozen water hose that you might have to replace in the spring because it ended up breaking. So those are just a little bit of information about irrigation. Again, if you don't feel comfortable doing a lot of this yourself, call somebody, but make sure they are a licensed irrigation company. And I believe SaveTarrantWater.com will also have that information. They'll have their green professionals that they recommend for you to use. So now let's make sure you can protect your plants from frostbite. Container plants. During the pandemic, a lot of people loved getting plants, and a lot of them were kept in containers on porches, on your balcony if you live in an apartment. And you just have to remember that those containers aren't heat or cold resistant. Those roots are exposed to those varying temperatures a lot more than if they were in the ground. So obviously, bring what you can indoors. This picture here pretty much looks like what my office looks at home during the winter, and honestly my office at work too. I try to bring as many plants here as I can because I know they're going to stay warm, or they live in my office at home. If you can't bring your container in, if it's too heavy, the plant's too big, or you just don't have the space, make sure they're in an area that they're not going to get a lot of wind or create a windbreak. When I lived in apartments, I took painter's plastic and taped it around my balcony to create a mini greenhouse. Some apartments won't allow that, but you can at least create a little mini greenhouse over your plants possibly. Hardy plants don't need to be moved inside, so again, anything that has a bark-like texture on its stem, or it's a tree or a hibiscus, or anything that is a hardy plant doesn't need to be inside or doesn't need to be moved, unless we are going to have weeks of a prolonged freeze, which luckily in Texas, knock on wood, is not something we experience very often. And again, if you can't bring plants inside, at least put them under a covered patio, possibly under a tree that will help them to retain heat. And then if you don't have any of those options, you can always cover them with a freeze cloth, some burlap, or again, create a mini greenhouse. I've done that in the past with PVC pipe and painter's plastic. You just build little mini greenhouses. There are tons of tutorials on YouTube how to build them. I've also done it to where it's a little more of a sturdy structure with 2x4s and plywood. Though wood right now is still kind of expensive, so maybe that PVC pipe would be a better option. So, talking about your outdoor landscape, the first steps you need to do before anything else, before you try to cover anything, remove those summer or warm weather plants that you have still hanging on. before they freeze. They're going to freeze. They're not meant to live in the winter and our fall. This will help eliminate possible damage to your hardy plants. It's not going to possibly have a plant on top of it or near its base, near its roots, that's going to freeze all the way to below ground. And then you're also limiting the possibility of disease entering your landscape. So those plants die, they're going to start rotting a lot of times, especially if they've had ice on them. So that is just inviting bacteria, inviting fungus into your landscape that could kill hardier plants. That in the winter, they're not as prepared as they are during the warmer months to fight off a disease. And then obviously remove anything dead or diseased. You don't want to create that mini greenhouse with a dead or diseased plant, because again, you're just creating a great environment for that bacteria or fungus to just flourish. So make sure before you do anything else, you at least, if you don't do anything else, at least do these two steps to make sure your lawn in your landscape is ready for the winter. So, outdoor landscape plants. If those tender plants, if you have tropical plants like banana or cannas, anything that's fleshy like that, a lot of them can be completely cut to the ground to where there's nothing above the soil. Cover that with mulch and you'll protect the root system, and they'll come back next year. But before you do that, make sure you do your own research on your plant to make sure it can be cut to the ground and come back next year, because not everything can. And if you have any questions about that, call up to our Master Gardener desk and they'll be able to help you. And as I said before, with your irrigation system, reduce your watering schedule. During the winter, your plants aren't using as much water, they're not transpiring as much, so they don't need to be watered as often. My rule of thumb is I only water things when they look like it's starting to wilt. And if you do water, or if we're going to have a hard freeze, a lot of times if you water your plants late afternoon, early evening before that hard freeze, that water will actually help protect the plants and keep them from freezing. The water displaces air in the soil and make sure to keep that soil warmer so your roots stay warm. If we have a hard freeze or even just a light frost, if you can, I know it's not always feasible, but get out in the morning before that sun hits those tender leaves and wipe that frost off. Doing that helps extreme temperature changes. So your plant's super cold right now, that sun hits it and it's going to warm up super quickly with that water, because that water is like a magnifying glass, and it's going to cause damage to that cambium layer of your plants, which again will invite in disease, and possibly it won't make it through another frosty night. The best time to prune is in late winter, once dormancy starts happening, especially for our hardier plants, for our trees. Make sure they are in their dormant stage before you trim anything, to prevent them from thinking, oh, okay, you cut this, now it's time for me to start growing again. Or to protect your cold damage from that tender cambium layer that's going to be exposed when you cut limbs or other pieces of your landscape plants off. If you do fertilize in the winter, which it's not super needed, make sure those fertilizers are high in phosphorus and potassium, because they're going to help to thicken cell walls and kind of boost your plant up and get it ready for the winter. It's kind of like what antifreeze does for your car. And it also provides sugars and carbs to help maintain cells and get it ready to start blooming and start growing again once the weather warms up. So some of your options for protecting landscape plants, some kind of barrier, is your freeze or frost cloth. So that's what this picture is right here. It's a thin cloth that you can put over plants. Make sure you have some kind of structure underneath it, even if it's just wooden dowels, to keep it off the plant, because you don't want it to touch that plant, because then there's no point of having the frost cloth on it. It's going to freeze through that and the plant's going to be damaged. So it's a great little tool if it's not going to be super cold or a heavy freeze. This is a great option. If we are going to have heavier freezes, or if you have some laying around, burlap is a great option to put over plants to really bundle them up if you have more tender plants that you can't move inside or can't cut to the ground. And then also, as I said before, those removable greenhouse structures, you can set them on top and then remove them during the day when it's warmer, so they get the sun and they don't essentially cook underneath that greenhouse. And then what I've also done in the past, if I've had extra pots that I'm not using, I'll place those over some of my smaller plants, or place a pot on top of a pot and create a little greenhouse that way, just to protect it and keep the frost and freeze off. Another great way to protect the root zone of your landscape plants is mulching. Super easy, super simple to do. And with Earthkind, to help maintain soil heat, soil moisture, soil health, is to maintain a 3-inch layer all year round. So if you want to be Earthkind, you should be doing that already. But begin mulching your beds now to help retain the heat on those our warmer days that we're having. We're still going to be luckily in the 70s for the next couple of days, but at night we're getting down to the 40s. So helping retain that heat from the daytime is going to help tremendously. And then not only is it retaining just heat, but it's helping to retain that moisture to protect our roots from freezing, because again, moisture is going to displace that air in the soil, and it's going to help a lot for our roots to stay nice and toasty. And then again, something that happens during fall is leaves fall. Leaves are a great option to use for mulch. Instead of bagging them up, you can either run over them with a lawnmower and mulch them on top of the grass, or you can rake them into your beds. And not only are you creating a great environment for some beneficial insects, but you're also helping to, again, retain heat and moisture. And then as those leaves break down, they're going to add organic matter and be a great fertilizer for your plants. So speaking about lawns, there is some things you can do to help protect your lawn during the winter, but one of the biggest things to remember is it's not going to stay green, and that's okay. Your lawn doesn't need to be green year-round. It's something that I get questioned a lot, of how to keep your lawn green all year, and unless you're using a cold weather species or cultivar or overseeding with rye, it's going to be brown. It's going to brown in the winter, and it's going to green back up in the spring, and it'll be great. I don't recommend overseeding with anything, because then you're going to fight it to get rid of it in the spring, and then you're also going to have that dead grass in your beautiful green grass for a while during the spring. So just let it be. Just let your grass hang out. And also, that dormant stage of your grass protects the root zone. It's not trying to bring in more moisture, bring in more nutrients to be happy and green. It's just hanging out, doing its thing, surviving. And as I said before, leave leaf debris on the ground to create insulation. If you don't like the big chunky leaves, you just run it over with the lawnmower and create mulch. But do not mow before predicted freeze, because that top layer is going to protect the root zone, and it's also going to protect the lower leaf blade. So maybe there's the top leaf blade might freeze, but that lower leaf blade might be okay, but your root zone's going to be great. And again, use fertilizers that are high in phosphorus and potassium and low in nitrogen. You don't want that nitrogen in your soil to promote growth, because that's what nitrogen does. What's what the plants think. Oh, I got nitrogen, I need to grow, grow, grow. So make sure you're not using those fertilizers. If you do want to fertilize about 3 weeks before the first frost date, which we're pretty much there at this point, if you do want to fertilize, but you don't have to. But this is while your grass is dormant and everything else is, and you're getting ready for spring, this is a great time to check your soil. You can get soil tests from our office. If you call in, we are more than happy to send you those. Excuse me. Just call up to either the Master Gardener desk or my office and give us your name and address, and we will gladly send you those soil test bags. Or you can get on the soil testing website with Texas A&M, print out the form. It's about $12 to $15 depending on shipping for the test, and you can also just bag it up yourself. Make sure when you do send soil through the mail, I always say to double, triple, quadruple bag it, because you don't want your soil to bust in a box. And not only will the soil sample not be able to be tested, but you're going to have a very angry mail carrier that might have some words to say or just be really annoyed with you. And then stop watering once your lawn is dormant. If it's not growing, it doesn't need water or as much water. It'll be fine getting what comes from rain, what comes from frost. Once it thaws out, or ice, it'll be fine. And with that, it's a super easy process to winterize your lawn and your landscape. If you have any questions about this presentation, about any plant question, that's what we are here for. You can call our Master Gardener desk. Here's the number and the email. These are the times that they will be in our office to answer phone calls, but you can email at any time. If you have questions, you can also send me an email, though I will say the Master Gardeners will be a lot faster to get answers for you, because I do a lot more than sit at my desk and answer emails, but I'm always happy to help. And here are some great websites to help you out. Aggie Horticulture, you can find almost any and all information that you need. We also have our Aggie Turf website that you can get through there. And then if you follow us on Facebook at Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service with Tarrant County, we post a lot of updates, a lot of classes that we're going to do in the future, which we have a few coming up. And any other information that you might ask, you can ask us through Facebook. Our Master Gardener program also has a Facebook and an Instagram if you want to go follow them over there, and they have great information for you as well. And with that, if you have questions, please let our Master Gardeners that are on the call know, and if they can't answer it, they'll send it to me and I will do my best to answer it. Sorry I couldn't be there. I'm currently at a conference. But if you have questions, either the Master Gardeners or they'll be able to get a hold of me to answer. So thank you everyone for coming to this talk, and I hope you enjoyed it.